Hello, AP Bio fans. Let's talk a little bit about genes that are or chromosomes that are not autosomal, genes that are on either the X or Y, and really the X, because the Y is really for determination of male. There's very few other traits on it. Anyhow, really coming off of understanding of mitosis and meiosis, really associating specific genes at specific loci on a specific chromosome came from a lot of the fruit fly work of Thomas Morgan. Now, fruit flies are great for genetic studies. They are used often because they produce many offspring every couple of weeks, and they only have four types of chromosomes. A little terminology change here. Um, Morgan used the terms wild type or mutant type. Wild type would be normal phenotypes. Mutant types would be anything else. So, as we're going to see in fruit flies, red eyes are normal phenotype. White eyes are not normal, so they're considered the mutant. It has a loose correlation to um, dominant and recessive um, in many respects. Anyhow, so in one experiment that we're looking at, Thomas Morgan made it a male flies with white eyes, which would be considered the mutant, with female flies with red eyes, which would be considered the wild type. And the F1 generation all had red eyes. So that shows you that red was the in a sense the dominant gene. So then theoretically, of course, we are we'll say heterozygous, although of course with fruit flies using the XY uh, type sex determination, males are only hemizygous. They only need one trait. But anyhow, Morgan determined that the white-eyed mutant allele must be located on the X chromosome because when you bred the F1 generations, all you saw the 3-to-1 kind of Mendelian ratio that we saw in monohybrid crosses between heterozygotes, but only males had white eyes. So there was a gender determination there. And those findings supported not only the fact that the white eye trait is on the X chromosome, but it also supported the theory of inheritance, which rolled really out of Mendel's studies and the understanding. And once mitosis and meiosis were developed and understood, and those cell processes later on were understood, came supported that chromosome theory of inheritance, where those chromosomes are carrying the genes, and the genes um, and chromosomes assort those traits assort independently and segregate into gametes. So there's a picture of your fruit flies, and really there's the breakdown of the cross, and you can see the wild type female and the mutant type male. All the offspring had red eyes, and then you mate two F1s, a female and a male. And what you notice here in the F2 generation, yes, you have Mendel's 3-to-1 ratio, but you have two females with red eyes, and then one male with red eyes and one with white eyes. And so then below that, of course, you're kind of looking at simple Punnett type squares in the mating format. The biggest one is the F2 generation. It shows you that from a male with wild type eyes and a female with wild type heterozygote, basically, and the hemizygous male, that you should have essentially one of each. You'll have a wild type, fully homozygous wild type female, a heterozygous female, a normal wild type male, and a mutant male. So that's what designated that a fly's eye color is associated with its gender. And so it associated with a particular chromosome, and really using X-linked chromosomes helped really kind of define what all the autosomal chromosomes must follow suit. Okay, and as we know, in humans and other mammals, there are two sex chromosomes, a larger X and a smaller Y. And really, it's the only two that don't look alike or don't pair exactly as homologs. Only the ends of the Y chromosome have regions that are homologous with corresponding regions of the X, and it's the SRY gene on the Y chromosome that codes for the proteins that develop male anatomical features and determines the male gender. There's other than that, there's almost no traits on the Y, while there's many, many, many on the X chromosome that are not related to gender. Okay, there's our picture. Females are double X, males are X and Y. Each ovum carries an X, so each ovum is only an X, while a sperm may be either an X or Y. Okay. So, if that gene is located on either an X or Y, is sex linked, although there's very few that we talk about that are Y. We really talk in sex linked terms of things that are on the X. Okay. All right. X-linked genes follow specific patterns of inheritance for it to be, and many, of course, are recessive. For it to be recessive, then the female would have to be homozygous recessive. The male only needs to be hemizygous because the male only gets one X. And therefore, when you look at pedigrees and you look at numbers, X-linked recessive disorders are much more common in males because any male with an X chromosome with the recessive allele, with the mutant allele, is going to display that disorder, where the female could just be a carrier. And here's probably the three options as when we looked at Mendel and heterozygous and single monohybrid crosses, we had noticed some patterns that in a heterozygous cross, you always had 1/4 homozygous dominant, 1/4 homozygous recessive, and 1/2 heterozygote. We could use those multiplication and addition rules and stuff and chi-square to make assumptions and hypotheses. We also noticed in Mendel's monohybrid crosses that a heterozygous cross with a homozygous, either dominant recessive, didn't matter, gave you half heterozygotes and half homozygotes. And so it's similar here with X-linked traits. And really, here's our three options. As you notice in A, if the female is homozygous wild type and the male is hemizygous mutant type for the recessive allele, then your females are going to be heterozygous. Both females will be heterozygous, and both males will be unaffected wild type males. In B, what you see is if you have a heterozygous female crossed with a wild type male, you're really going to get a little bit, you're going to get really 25% of each, or I should say, half the possibilities in each gender. You're going to have a female that is completely homozygous wild type. You're going to have a female that is heterozygous wild type. You're going to have a male that is wild type and a male that is going to be mutant. Okay. And in C, if you have a heterozygous female mating with a mutant male, then again, what you notice there is you really hit a whole lot of options. That's where you're going to find your affected female. Because as you notice, you have one heterozygous female and one wild type female, recessive female. And then you're going to have one unaffected wild type male, and you're going to have one mutant male. Some disorders, just so you know, caused by recessive X chromosomes, colorblind, muscular dystrophy, hemophilia. And here would be a sample problem. You have a human female carrier, heterozygous for the recessive sex-linked trait causing red-green color blindness. What proportion of the male will have red-green color blind? Well, if we go back to our three options, that's letter B, and we have two males, and one of them is unaffected and one is affected. So 50% of our male progeny run the chance of having that red-green color blind. Okay. So if the Y chromosome, and here's a good question, if the Y chromosome is essentially for sex determination, and female mammals, including humans, have two X chromosomes, Do they produce a whole lot more proteins from the X chromosome than the males would? And the answer is no, because what happens in mammals is they inactivate randomly in all mammalian females. One of the two X chromosomes in each cell is randomly inactivated and called a barbod. And while you see this plenty in mammals of some type, and there are certain human examples, but they're rather rare, but it's very easy to see, as we're going to show in cats. How do cats and some animals get those calico colors? Well, if you think of uh, you have a couple possible alleles between black and orange fur in a female, and she has one of each, then it depends on which one is inactivated. So you'll have areas where uh, you'll have hairs where the orange is inactive and you see black fur. You'll have areas where the black is inactive and you'll have orange. Okay. So that's our quick background on X-linked traits. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later.